Today's shenanigans begin as of the recording of this, Ash Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. Made a drive up to Chalmette, just outside of New Orleans. Welcome everyone. Caroline is just ahead because she's standing down a hill. Went to the Chalmette battlefield from the War of 1812. Nothing funny about that. The War of 1812, we're going to go wander around, see what kind of things we can find here and what sort of shenanigans happen throughout the day. Let the shenanigans begin. Have a cannon and some cannonballs stacked up here right next to the battlefield official sign, letting you know where you are. Also a traffic cone. Have a little display right here talking about the war up to 1812. Starts with the Indian or the native perspective right there. As I said, you're right here. The American plan was to conquer Canada. Interesting. It's a map of the War of 1812 up to 1814 right here. Talking about the New York campaign, Chesapeake campaigns, Battle of Horseshoe Bend and Fort Mims in the Creek War, and the Gulf Coast campaigns. We're like right in here-ish. This talks about America in 1812, how people identified by their state rather than as a country. And then how down here, westward moving settlers fought with American Indian tribes who struggled to defend and keep their land. The U.S. only had 4.3 people per square mile, most of who lived east of the Appalachian Mountains. This talks about life in New Orleans, right here, and how the census in the U.S. was 3% free people of color, 16% slave, and 81% white. In 1810 in New Orleans, however, 29% free people of color, 34% slave, and 37% white. A Highlander badge right there, along with the sword of an officer. Cavalry helmet, along with some coins, a 10 cent and a 50 cent coin. There's the canteen right there, and one of the drums. Little model, what it looked like being there on the battlefield.
White people were 81%. That's a lot of white people. Come here.
Talks about how the artillery duel began January 1st of 1815, right here on this spot. This talks about the Battle of Lake Borgne, which is just off the coast of Louisiana, just off, looks like it actually connects to Lake Pontchartrain a little bit. Talks about the flintlock mechanism right here. Clicks back. Some of the pistols from the time. Some more of the swords. The bayonets right there. And remnants of a scabbard. Fragments of a rampart that were found during an archaeological project in 1984. They found on the property here. The rampart being these wooden pylons here. There's some more of the rifles and the bayonets, along with some of the rifle balls up there. It's a replica of the British uniforms. It's a replica of the U.S. Union uniform, along with a musket, a 1-pound cannon, as well as some cannonballs over here.
It's an economic engine that feeds and fuels our nation and a product connecting us to the rest of the world.
Of various sizes. There's a cannonball they let you lift up. See how heavy it is. Here's the key to the monument, which is outside. We'll look at that in just a minute. Along with some of the commemorative medals.
And violent storm surges threaten our once stable coastline with each.
We've stepped outside of the visitor center, and here is that monument. That key opens, presumably that door, right there in front of us. Gonna do what I can to block the wind noise here. We have this monument. It stands about 100 feet tall. This talks about how the plans were for it to be 150 feet, but they tested the foundation and found that it cannot stand that tall, so they stopped it at 100 feet. Standing next to the monument here, looking out over the battlefield. There's those pylons as mentioned earlier. Here's the backside of the berm right there onto the battlefield. You can take a driving tour. I think I may try to walk a little bit here and see what other things I can find along the back end. These are always kind of neat to see, those little crawfish mounds here in this canal, this little ditch that's right here, which I'm sure we'll read about in just a minute. This right here talks about the canal right here. It was originally built to carry water to power a sawmill, but in 1815 it had been abandoned for a long time. The banks collapsed. However, General Andrew Jackson, who was general at the time, was a perfect spot for the troops to defend from. So the soldiers and enslaved people from the nearby plantations dug out the canal and used the dirt to build a rampart that stretched all the way from the Mississippi River to the Cypress Swamp. Once it was finished, the canal was filled with water and became a strong line of defense. That's this right here. There's some of the remnants of it. Plantation house still sitting back there. From what I understand, you can't go in it anymore, at least right now. Maybe some restoration efforts will be underway at some point, so you can go in there. But right now, you can't go in there, but that's right here just beyond that Rodriguez Canal. Always cool to be underneath the oak trees with the Spanish moss hanging from it. This talks about the Rodriguez and McCarthy plantations. I think if I recall, this plantation here is the McCarthy plantation, and that both plantations were used by Andrew Jackson to set up his headquarters, where he would sit up on the top floor, overlook everything, and kind of bark orders out of the artillery. This mentions Chalmette Plantation, which is no longer here, but how Ignace Delino de Chalmette bought a sugar plantation that started the Rodriguez Canal and stretched along the river for about a mile. But to protect from the British, they filled it with gunpowder and set it on fire so it could not be used. Here's about batteries 2 and 3, how Jean Lafitte and his pirates helped General Andrew Jackson, and how they helped defend the U.S. This was a big, Battle of New Orleans was a big deal with this war. On December 25th, 1814, Andrew Jackson started building defenses on the west side of the Mississippi. By January 8th, almost 1,000 soldiers from Kentucky and Louisiana, along with several groups of cannons, some taken from American ships, were guarding the area. Gives kind of the whole break right there of the West Bank assault. In the the scene, they think might have looked something like this. Standing up here on the top of the levee, there's the Mississippi right there. And right behind me, there's the plantation. Gives you kind of an idea of the that West Bank assault. We're currently on the east bank of the Mississippi. How this was used. British were coming from over there. This board here talks about the Battlefield National Cemetery. Gives some of the things. Just the different levels of attack right here. And I stand corrected. This is actually the Mollis Beauregard house. So neither of those plantations is talked about. But yeah, interesting to kind of get an idea about how things went. Ah, here we go. Here's another board talking about the Beauregard house, the Mollis Beauregard house. How it started out as a French Creole style country home and then became a plantation. After the battle, the destruction of the Chalmette plantation during the Battle of New Orleans left the family in financial trouble. In 1817, brothers Hilaire and Louis Saint-Amant bought the land. Really, that family, they were well-known free people of color who already owned plantations, and it was not uncommon for them to also enslave folks themselves. And they had sugar plantation here. The warning sign saying that it's unsafe to enter for both employees and visitors. So I have to stay behind the stanchions, but standing here at the base of the home. See if we can walk around it a little bit while staying behind the stanchions so we can remain safe. There's an idea about some of the damage, wood rot and what have you. There's going to be a lot of repairs that are going to need to be made. Just beyond the traffic cones, the front of the plantation. Some of the upper windows up over there. Not sure if this is a grave marker or just a little memorial statue right here along the back of the plantation. It does say, in memory of Major Samuel Spots, who shot the first gun at the Battle of New Orleans on January 8th, 1815. He died July 11th, 1833 in New Orleans. Might have to look that up. Well, after doing a real quick search, says he's buried at the National Cemetery, which is just on the other side of the property here. Not sure if they mean this is where he is buried, or if he's actually buried over in the cemetery itself. But either way, here's the feller that shot the first shot at the Battle of New Orleans. Here's one of the cannons right here on the back side of the berm overlooking the battlefield. Again, with the plantation home there behind it. Little tracks that they would push it forward through. And then going across. A couple other cannons here and a few more down the way. Drove right next to the battlefield. Battlefield's still right over there. Into the National Cemetery here in Chalmette. Going to look for an interesting individual, or an individual with an interesting story, we shall say. Alright, we have made it. Section 52, grave 4066. We have the grave of Lyons Wakeman from New York. Now, Lyons worked as a coal miner in New York after finding out how much they could make as a coal miner in the city. Well, then there was the volunteer efforts for the war, and Lyons signed up. Well, Lyons was actually born Sarah Wakeman, but lived her life as a male for most of her adult life, for most of their adult life. And here they are, casualty of the war, buried here in the National Cemetery, right here, next to the battlefield. Just looked up a little bit more about Lyons here. She fought in the Battle of Pleasant Hill, and after being injured, actually died of dysentery from it. So, Lyons, thank you for your service. Here's John Jones. He served in the Navy during the Civil War as a person of color and a Medal of Honor recipient after being injured in one of the battles in Mobile Bay. So everyone in here has a story, a lot of injuries, a lot of things. So again, John, thank you for your service.